Welcome back to John's Jazz Joint. John and Lisa producing another musical video for your enjoyment. We're going to be going down to New Orleans once again. I've had the pleasure of being in New Orleans at Christmas time, and I know that the restaurants with their scrumptious meals, the jazz musician that's in all the restaurants, the bands that go marching down the streets, the cemeteries that are above ground, it's quite an attraction for tourists, and it's always been that way because New Orleans is situated on the a waterway, and tourists are brought in by boat, steamboat down the river, down the Mississippi River, and also from the Caribbean ships come in. There are lots of soldiers, lots of sailors, lots of fishermen. And there's a railway line that goes right into the heart of New Orleans. Today we're going to be talking about a street called Basin Street. It's a song that was composed in 1926 by a contemporary of Louis Armstrong. His name was Spencer Williams, and both of them grew up in the same area, so they were familiar with Basin Street. So what exactly was Basin Street? Well, it was one of the four streets that encased the red light district of New Orleans. It was called Storyville and was created around 1896, thereabouts. It had been based on the red light districts in Germany and Amsterdam, the Netherlands. They took those ideas and brought them over to New Orleans, and the idea was that they could regulate all that kind of activity if it were in one place. So between 1896 and 1917, you had a part of New Orleans that was called Storyville, a couple of blocks north of the French Quarter. And this song then was written in 1926, kind of a nostalgic look back at that period of time. So we're going to do Basin Street Blues, and we're going to be using this drum that was given to me as I left Africa back in 1966. My students, at a ceremony at the end of my last day there, they presented me with this drum in a very nice, a very touching ceremony at the end of my 2-year stay. So, without further ado, Basin Street Blues. Oh, won't you come along with me down the Mississippi? We'll take a boat to the land of dreams, steam down the river down to New Orleans. The band's there to greet us, old friends to meet us, where all the light and dark folk meet, heaven on earth. They call it Basin Street. Basin Street is the street where the elite always meet in New Orleans, land of dreams. You'll never know how nice it seems or just how much it really means. Glad to be, yes sirree, where welcome's free, dear to me, where I can lose my Basin Street blues. So, Basin Street Blues then quickly became a favorite of jazz musicians. Louis Armstrong recorded it 2 years later. It was written in 1926. Louis recorded it in 1928, and lots of folks recorded it afterwards. Just to give you an idea of some of the names of other people who recorded on it. Surprisingly, Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, the country and western song, they recorded it. I don't know what they're doing there. The Mills Brothers, Dave Brubeck, Ray Charles, Oscar Peterson, Bing Crosby, Ella Fitzgerald, and so on. So it was a really great song for jazz musicians. Spencer Williams himself kind of had an interesting life as well. He did play in Chicago and New York, but then he went to Europe and he spent time in London and in Stockholm and Denmark before he came back to the United States, where he passed away in Flushing Meadows, the same place where Louis Armstrong passed away. So our story then that we want to really kind of look at today is Basin Street and the section that we called the district between 1896 and 1917. It was what you would call the red light district, of course, but there was more to it than that. It was a series of mansions. The most famous one, the most lavish, was called Mahogany Hall, and it was run by a very inventive lady named Lulu Smith. She had a four-story house, a four-story building. She employed 40 ladies. She had 15 rooms running with hot and cold water. And basically, she was a driving force in the community at that period of time. But it was only, remember, this was 38 blocks that were encased so that it could be regulated. So you might ask, well, how did it come to an end in 1917? Well, surprisingly enough, in 1917, the United States entered World War I. And one of the things that they said they didn't want to have happen was to have their boys distracted by the entertainment in the red light district. And so they passed a regulation that all of these bordellos should be closed down. There shouldn't be anything within 5 miles of a military base. So very quickly in 1917, over the protests of the mayor of New Orleans, because he saw that this was a very profitable economic activity going on in his city, he suggested that it shouldn't happen, but it did. In 1917, Storyville was closed down, and all of the activity that was going on there went underground. It didn't die. It just was no longer regulated, and it would go on during the 20s and the 30s when there was a prohibition on booze and all of those activities. New Orleans itself became the city where let the good times roll became the mantra. And so New Orleans, and is even today with its Mardi Gras and its other activities, brings tourists in. You can imagine when the railroad line came into this area of Storyville, just right into the heart of New Orleans, the ladies up in the windows of the various bordellos would be waving at the customers. And the customers, well, there was a blue book you could buy for 25 cents that listed the 700 ladies that lived in the area and what their various services were. So these blue books could be bought at the train stations and the barber shops. They were readily available. So Basin Street then was the haven for having fun, having a good time. And we're going to close it out now with the guitar rendition of Basin Street Blues. You notice we have a new guitar today. This was a guitar that was originally owned by Dirk Grantham, a well-known guitarist in Portage la Prairie. He modified it. You'll never know how nice it seems or just how much it really means. Glad to be, yes sirree, where welcome's free. Dear to me, where I can lose my Basin Street blues. Well, there you have it, Basin Street Blues from New Orleans, written in 1926, recorded by Louis Armstrong in 1928. And I hope you enjoyed it. That's it from John's Jazz Joint, from John and Lisa. Hope to see you next time. Take care. Bye now.